All right, 3, 2, 1. Oh, it's already going. Hey guys, 3, 2, 1. Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Drewski with Cryptid Warfare and Conspiracies podcast and CW Operations and Survival. Hope you guys had a blessed week. And guys, bundle up because it is freaking Saturday night. It's going to be dropping cold out there. So, other than that, you guys got any experiences? You got any stories? You guys want to be on the show? Anything like that at all? You guys want to talk about your testimonies? Go ahead and shoot me an email. That's cryptidwarfare@gmail.com, cryptidwarfare@gmail.com, or hit me up on Instagram. That's where I'm the most heaviest at. Just look up Cryptid Warfare, shoot me a DM, and we'll go from there. You guys got any problems with cryptids? You guys got any spiritual warfare things going on? UFO activity? Anything like that? If you're afraid to talk to anybody about it, people, you're afraid to talk to law enforcement about it or anything like that, just go ahead and shoot me another email. That's we would actually love to help you guys out. So we're more of like a cryptid monster consulting squad, basically. So we're more like liaisons. We'll try to help you guys out, try to give you guys details on what to do, what not to do, and then if you need us to go out there, we'll go out there and try to handle it. So just go ahead and shoot me an email at c.woperations17905@gmail.com or hit me up on Instagram, Cryptid Warfare. So other than that, guys, I got some awesome guests on here. If you guys don't know them, you guys live under a freaking rock. So to me, they have two of the best YouTube channels out there, guys. Okay. One of the guests is Dr. Dennis Carroll. He's from Hunting the Shadows. Look him up on YouTube. And then my homeboy, my brother, I'm gonna call him Kenny T because his last name's so French. I'm not gonna say it. I do not want to butcher it. But AKA Starfox, guys. You guys want to look up his YouTube channel? It's Midnight Lycanthropy Podcast. So, may I introduce to you guys Kenny? May I introduce to you guys yet again Dr. D? Boys, what is going on? Glad you guys have me on the show.
Thanks for having me stop in. Excellent
Kenny
to see
and I've been busy doing a little podcast of our own together. We do one, I think, mostly weekly now, right, Kenny? We get together and do one,
Yeah, I would try to get Kenny on, but he's a night owl. I'm a night owl too, but I stay up during the morning to kind of knock some stuff out. And Kenny's a vampire, so he crashes out during the day. I don't blame him, man. I don't blame him at all because I want to crash out too. But the show must go on. So
keeping those vampire hours. Yeah, I've done a few of those myself, especially when you stay up late at night living in the rabbit holes that you do in research and all that. Sometimes you have to do the vampire hours the next morning, definitely. But that's the way. That's par for the course. That's the way it goes with investigative research. We talked about that before, and I was talking to Kenny about that the other day. There's a big difference between research and investigative research. A lot of people don't catch that. Research, you can just reading a book or listening to the news or something, but in deep investigative research takes a lot of time.
Yeah, real quick before we get on to that, why don't you guys plug in your channels? Kenny, why don't you give everybody a shout and tell everybody where you're at, where they can find you?
What's up? Thanks for getting me back to hanging out with both of you for sure. You, of course, can find me quite easily by typing in the good old Midnight Lycanthropy term. Yes, or just type in Lord Starfox. You can plug yourself right into my good old thread over there. I have 3 podcasts that are just all run underneath one brand, Midnight Lycanthropy. The podcasts are Yes, When Crows Speak, where I cover things that are deemed creepypastas that really don't have any sort of substance that has relevance to being taken as fact. So I bring in some people, usually from my science team or just people in general that I have a chance to collaborate with consistently that specialize in those topics, and we just put it where it belongs and scuff some dirt on it. And then I have Camp Nightmare Fuel, where we cover anything that falls under the realm of being able to be verified. That is nightmare fuel, whether it's animal attacks, whether it's true crime, whether it's some sort of interaction with a deranged individual, anything that is considered scary. And then, yes, Midnight Lycanthropy is where I cover missing people, prehistoric and modern day predator behaviorisms, also strange canine, hyena, baboon like sightings, as well as what we potentially would deem the Dogman. And that is where I am most active. Yes, I do have all other social medias for the most part under either Midnight Lycanthropy or Lord Starfox. Yet, honestly, I spend probably, no exaggeration, 80 hours a week just trying to make sure my YouTube channel is functioning properly. I'm getting amazing hosts and guests such as yourself. Then I need to work on creating all my own music, all my own imagery. I need to make sure the cases that we are covering are properly laid out in front of me. And then I need to edit all that stuff. And then the worst part about it is having to share it all around within the groups that are out there. Yet that's pretty much where you're going to find me the most active, is on YouTube for sure.
Right on, man. Sounds good. Yeah, it's a fact. I know you bust your butt, dude, at doing these podcasts, man. Dude, you're probably the dude who hustles the most. I know that. So cheers to that, man. Danny, yeah. Dr. D, what we got, brother? Where can people find you at?
Yeah, well, I have a channel called Hunting the Shadows YouTube podcast channel and agency. I sort of field stuff with the paranormal and things like that. My channel has two main shows or main nights that I run my programs on, and that's on Wednesday nights at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 o'clock Central, and Friday night at same time, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard, 7 o'clock Central. I do 3 shows. I rotate one show on that. The main show I do is Hunting the Shadows. I also do another one called Paranormal Point of View, where I do book reviews, talk about movies, stuff like that that has something to do with the paranormal. And then there's another one I do that with a friend of mine that is called, it's Red Pill Preachers, by the way, is his name, and David Roach. And we do that one called The Road Less Traveled. And we kind of do a lot of offbeat stuff on that. So it's, make it kind of interesting. And I have actually also a paranormal consultation service. And so, you can reach me if you ever have any questions, problems, whatever the situation. Just want to tell your story, want to talk about it. And sometimes it helps to talk about things, definitely. So you can get in contact with me at denniswcarroll.com. That's my website. Or you can Gmail me at denniswcarroll@gmail.com. But you can get me a lot easier through the website. That's denniswcarroll.com. And also, I am an author. I have a good many books for sale on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. Just look up the author Dennis W. Carroll. And also, I have some other little shows that I do on the side. I do a Bible reference show called A Few Minutes with the Word, and that's like weekly. I do that, but you never know what day it's coming out on. Depends a lot, but that's on my channel as well, along with another little program I'm doing where I tell mostly just sort of like horror stories, ghost stories, and stuff like that. And it's called Spooky Stuff with Dennis Carroll. Okay, so that's another one I got going over there as well. My career has expanded over pretty close to 60 some odd years now. So all of this stuff, I'm interested in all aspects of this. Always have been, always will be. Somebody asked me the other day when I'm going to retire. I said I don't see that happening. It's too darn fascinating to ever turn it loose. And for me, that's where I'm at, definitely.
Right on, guys. Sounds good. We got over 100 and some years of knowledge right here on this platform, so I think we're good to go. Um, yeah. So okay. So there was actually a bunch of topics we're actually going to be talking about. So, shoot, we'll just freaking just dive into it. Okay. So since your forte, in my opinion, Kenny, is Dogman, and let's get into that. And I know you got a lot of information on that too, Doctor D. So for all these people out there who don't know what Dogman is, can you kind of give them a synopsis of what it is, Kenny? And I'm kind of putting you on the spot.
That's a pretty large question for sure. Yet I'll try to graciously browse over the topic before we let Dr. Carroll dive very deeply into it. I'm a nerd. Long story short is I've never had any sort of paranormal or cryptid encounters. I've only had a few encounters with very interesting or deranged human beings, that's for sure. Yet I'm very scientific based at the same time. I try to keep a very healthy and open mind towards things. I'm very subjective and objective. So when it comes to the topic that you're referring to, I more or less am the analytics, all right, and then individuals such as yourself and Dr. Carroll provide me with the great details that I can turn into analytics and analysis, and then create these charts that show time frames of encounters or areas where people are missing or what is happening with the type of animals that are being cited. And then we're able to break that down into all these categories and try to figure out where, things are falling into place. So when it comes to what it could be, in the beginning, just like most people, you would assume, and again, assumptions aren't good, when something is listed as Dogman, well, all right, it's got to be canine, right? Dogman. Well, rest in peace, Miss Linda Godfrey. She herself even said she wishes she didn't necessarily term it that. And there's different variants that come into play, which is a whole episode in general, because you have some that are based as German Shepherd or Helsing or something out of the Howling, and then you have the Bear Man, then you have the Gugway looking devil monkeys, then you have the hyena looking ones. So all these fall into categories, yet hyenas are not canines. They have no relation to canines or felines whatsoever. Bears split off a very long time ago from having any sort of relation with canines, which would have been the Amphicenoidae and the Amphicenoidoids, the bear dogs, very long time ago. No canine relation at all. And baboons, which I, as well as a lot of great people I work with, are starting to think when you look at a lot of these dogman encounters, there's a ton of primate behaviorism over canine behaviorisms being seen in trees, having long raccoon or squirrel like hands, huge manes, being quadrupedal, bipedal. Very interesting stuff for sure. So there's a lot that's going on. I know when we're able to figure out, hey, this is flesh and blood, then we have individuals that would specialize in that aspect of, could it be some of these prehistoric predators that really didn't go extinct during the ice age, like the short-faced cave bear or the Dinopithecus or the cave hyenas. I mean, these are all things that are actually reported as being seen a lot of times. And when you look at a Dinopithecus, that is a man-sized baboon that you can look back in history, that even the gladiators made references about being forced to fight these individuals during the Roman times. You now also have the Pteropithecus, which was another style of ape that had nothing to do with baboons, that was massive and human-sized as well. These are things that are in the fossil record only 10,000 to 11,000 years ago. And if you look in areas where they did flourish, there was cave systems and also other ways for them to stay out of the weather and survive. it's very interesting. So I think there's a lot that is going on between all of this, because you have a lot of people that say it was manifesting or look to be transparent. You have other people that claim they hit it. It was on the side of the road. We have the images of the creature that was on the side of the road, yet we couldn't get there in time to get this creature, and then it was no longer there, but we had the images. You can see it. It's there, just like all of us are here right now. And then you have other people saying that they've seen orbs and UFOs. Recently in Michigan, someone sent me something that was pretty interesting. I mean, I don't know why there wouldn't be footprints or another set of claw marks, but they claim to have orbs on their property, and it looks to be like something with long claws that clawed the snow. Yet obviously air and such and debris could cause this type of design in the snow, but would it really look like something just dragged its claws down there? Could it have been a perspective shot, meaning someone was just taking it from that angle where you can't see where they walked out to this area, yet there's nothing else around to solidify what this was? So where did it come from? It's so gnarly, man.
Definitely, that's interesting. We talked about that before in the past, and that's where my own self, me and mainline science kind of have a disagreement. Mainline science does not recognize spiritual attributes on these things. They don't think about that, but I think without a doubt that a lot of evidence in the world around us shows us that there are coexisting dimensions going on here. They are, and I think one of those dimensions definitely is a spiritual type dimension. We live in a physical dimension. Where we're in right now tonight here is a different dimension than the spiritual. But I have actually, with my own eyes, in my career, I have encountered many different supernatural beings and entities, and I have seen with my own eyes these things materialize from the spiritual dimension into the physical realm. And a lot of cryptids, I think, have this ability. That may be Bigfoot, it may be Dogman, there may be a long list of these. And another thing that I differ with mainline science is they will tell you one day somebody flipped the switch and all this stuff died out. I don't believe that either. I believe that there are still remnants of this stuff behind, left out there somewhere. And you have a lot of clues with that when you talk about, like, the dire wolves that may not have completely died out, but may have bred with another subspecies of some sort and may still be out there in some other type of a form than the actual dire wolves, but they're still with us in that way, And there are other, indicators and clues to things like this. People seeing mastodons. People have actually claimed to have encountered the short-faced cave bear, which was one of the largest carnivores that ever walked this planet. What if that thing is still out there? And like Kenny said, they existing and I think there's a big connection with the cave systems. And that's a lot of, I think, going on with that as well. But if these things have a spiritual nature to them, then they would have that ability, probably in a way, to move between these dimensions. We have that. I think that's where a lot of missing people go. Okay, so I'm hitting on a lot of subjects here tonight, but I'm thinking that could be one explanation, not the whole broad explanation for it, but some of that could be people who disappear in these portals and certain places or liminal places that they may encounter and not be able to get back. If you tonight were to walk into another dimension, my friends, you might not make it back out of that because you're in a different existence altogether. You might not be able to find your way back. We don't know. A lot of people supposedly do not come back from that and tell us really what's going on. Just like, the veil beyond life and death. A lot of people don't come back. You got very distinct clues, that tell you that. And I've had people ask me in my career, all these many years that I've been doing this, do I believe in life after death? I said, without a doubt, I have seen the evidence for it, that there is something beyond death. And I think a lot of this stuff is interdimensional in its properties. If there, just like I've told people before, if there's a heaven, it definitely exists in another dimension. Or if there's a a bad place to go to in main existence. There may be different dimensions here, and I think without doubt, science proves that. We have seen that, and I think there's a lot of cryptid activity connected to that. And when I have studied the Dogman, looking deep into his nature and reading about all the eyewitness reports and the case histories, and that's where the real investigative research is. Okay, deep in the case histories, sightings, and eyewitness accounts. When you look at a lot of those things, there's a very dark tie-in to Dogman. I've got to wonder about him a lot. I don't know if he's part of some type of dark conjuration thing going on here. If he's being brought from some other type spiritual dimension here for a purpose sometimes. I don't really know. You got a lot of open questions here with this. And that's where you got, that's where your research goes. That's the rabbit holes you got to visit when you look at this. But here's something I'll say this, and I'll throw this out there for you guys, I've been asked this over the years, about all the different aspects of the paranormal, the supernatural, cryptidology, UFOlogy, all the whole thing. It is strangely all connected. And you got to realize that from the beginning. Every bit of this is connected. And so somebody asked me not long ago in the interview, I used to do a lot of lectures. I would talk about this during lectures. What is the connection? We are the connection. We are the connection.
Yeah, to me, it makes a lot of sense on that because to me, we're almost kind of like the pendulum swinging on both ends. And when it comes to missing people, cave systems, hikers, all these things, man. And I agree. Honestly, the more and more I'm going on these operations, the more when I first started out, I was straight up, these things are flesh and blood, hands down. You could not change my mind. But as you're a researcher, boots on the ground, you do researching in the chair and all that as well. The longer I'm doing this, the longer I'm realizing I don't know. And also too, the more I'm seeing a whole spiritual aspect of it as well. Because now I'm starting to, like these last couple operations we've been on, been spiritual more than anything. Of course, we've seen a little physical, but mainly it's been spiritual. But I'm not saying that it's not flesh and blood. I do believe that if they pass through the portal and they get on our side, I do believe they have to abide by God's laws. They have to eat, pardon my language, they have to shit, they have to drink water, they have to, yeah. But that's just my thought. Go ahead.
Take, for example, the werewolf a minute. Let's look at it, okay? And you bring up a perfect sample on that. The werewolf, the average werewolf, is a human being who takes upon himself this attribute to become a werewolf, okay? Or you can be cursed or whatever the situation is, but most of the time you desire to do this thing. You do dark rituals, you do the start of, and this is very directly tied into darkness, into the spiritual darkness of this world via what we would call black witchcraft, okay? It's demonic power. That's what it basically is. If you want to know what the plug-in for it is, that's the plug-in for it. In order for me to become a werewolf, and I can tell you tonight how to do it, but I advise you not to. And I have a lot of people come up to me over the years. How do I do this, Dennis? Can I become a werewolf? I said, I'm not going to tell you that. I don't want your blood on my hands. I don't want your soul on my hands because that's what it's going to require. You don't want to pay that price. But listen to what I'm about to tell you. When you become a werewolf, you are a physical person. Okay? You are a witch, warlock, whichever the case may be. You take on the persona of the werewolf. It's a spiritual thing. So you are existing in this dimension physically and spiritually at the same time here going on, okay? This makes it able for you, if you have to kill the werewolf because he's physical. You can do that. If he were spiritual, you would have a big problem, okay? You'd have to go around it a completely different way because it's not physical. So in order to dispatch something, kill it, whatever name you want to call it, you've got to have it being physical in your reality. And a lot of times when these things are like you just said a moment ago, they are like, transcending from one reality to another. Okay. From the spiritual into the physical. Then they are now in your reality and they can kill you. They can do bad things to you because they're now in your reality that way. I have known spirits to attack people in spiritual form, but it's never as violent and deadly as it is when it's in physical form in your reality. So that's what makes the werewolf so downright dangerous and other type cryptids and beings like that, because it can exist in your physical reality and do a whole lot more harm to you that way. Yeah, and we've talked about this before. I'll talk about this with Kenny. If you were to come up on two scenarios where a dogman has attacked these people in a camper and a werewolf has attacked these people in a camper, I can tell you immediately which one did what. Because the dogman, supposedly when he gets violent, doesn't get that violent. Okay? He might rip a throat out, do something like that. He might dispatch you real quick and immediately leave. Okay? The werewolf, on the other hand, you're going to find nothing but pieces of body parts in that camper. Because that's the way he operates. He is a psychotic killer. He doesn't stop at what he's doing. So you got to know what the attributes, you got to know what the spiritual and physical attributes of these things that you are seeking. And you have to be ready for that, your own self, in a spiritual and physical reality to deal with them. Because if you don't, you are working at a big disadvantage that may cost you your life.
Yeah. Roger that. Yeah, you got to be, as that saying goes, luck favors the prepared, man. All right, question for you, Kenny. What's the difference between the dogman and a werewolf? With all the studies and stuff you've been digging into.
That is another very in-depth question.
Sorry, bro.
No, you're good. I like to nerd out, man, so there's no issues with this whatsoever. Yet Dr. Carroll in a second is going to be able to elaborate more on this. It could be a few different options, yet I would like to lean more towards one of two. Either the cynocephali and things in the past that are mentioned, such as Anubis or St. Christopher, were truly dog-headed individuals, or lost in translation. There is a lot of evidence to also support that cynocephali was mistranslated, that technically the aspect of canine head wasn't really even supposed to be in the original translation. Could it have been the Romans being pompous, and you have another culture that still is more Nordic based or Germanic, wearing animal skins and living off the land and coming down to trade with them? Okay, and the Romans look upon this as, you are animalistic, you are animal people. That really could also be something that had occurred. Could Anubis have come from an area, maybe in the Caribbean or a place in Africa, and he had the darker skin complexion and was wearing the head of a jackal and somehow was able to influence the Egyptians in that aspect? Could also be something that is interesting to look at. All right, and then now you have the other realm that I like how Dennis has made some interesting steps in to push this to more of a theory now and not so much a hypothesis. This is way more of his realm than mine. Yet if you look into skinwalkers, which my buddy Ryan Tremblay, who was part of my science team as well, is really deep into that with the Wendigo and such, and Dennis and I have had numerous conversations about this. So I have great knowledge at my hand, and when it is presented to me and the topic causes that to be brought up, I understand that as you do something more and more, it becomes harder and harder to take back on your original form. So what if these dogmen, as Mr. Carroll says, have no longer the capability of going back into human form because they were initially werewolves. I don't know, man. It really seems like we're either dealing with something that is historical, that really was these dog-headed beings, or you had indigenous cultures that were wearing these animal skins. Let's be real though, that still is scary. William White, who is also part of my science team, he's my geologist. He has seen individuals that he knew that were very large people, and they would put on these animal skins like bear skins and wolf skins, and he said it literally looked so terrifying because they were already huge and it just didn't look right, and it literally looked like a human bear or wolf creature. Very interesting. And then, like I said, you have the other aspect now of, did they just do something so much like in the skinwalker lore that they can no longer really come back to who they are? Meaning the Wendigo and such is not necessarily in the same category. It's got some similar traditional aspects, but look at Swift Runner, same thing, right? I mean, he ended up becoming basically the Wendigo. I mean, he didn't, as far as it's documented, turn into this huge white skinny looking Wendigo thing that had a deer skull and horns on. No, he was still himself, but what he participated in and how he was reiterating I am the Wendigo or whatever, very bizarre stuff for sure. So I don't know, Dr. Carroll.
Well, the Wendigo is definitely looked upon as a mainly spiritual being. And it does not have that skull and antlers thing. That's Hollywood. Okay. It has never been depicted as that by the indigenous peoples that believe in its existence. It is looked upon more as the cold, hard, hungry spirit of winter that overtakes people and makes them do bad things like eat other people to survive. And that's part of the Wendigo thing. I've actually, I think, one time encountered a Wendigo spirit like that. And the only thing that drove it from that clearing that I was in was a silver knife that I stuck in the ground. Long story, I won't go into it tonight, but it got rid of that silver properties of that. But it is a spiritual thing. You don't really, most 99.9% of the time, you don't see the Wendigo because he is a liminal being. He's not in your, like we talked about earlier, in your dimension. He's not in your physical reality. He is a spiritual thing. And that's the way you got to look at him. But in some of these other things you mentioned, definitely throughout the world, there are legends, and I have studied them greatly over time. It's fascinating stuff. If you ever want to do some research into it, it is really interesting stuff. But every culture had people who blur the lines between humanity and animal. And like you mentioned the Vikings with the berserkers and the Uffendar. The Uffendar were the Viking warriors who took on the wolf skins and became wolves. They even had the wolf claws for weapons. The same thing with the berserkers. They put on the bear skins and became bears through drugs, through rituals, and some other things they were doing. They actually believed they were these animals. And they would kill their own people on the battlefield. They would just go crazy with this because they were drug-induced, definitely, episodes that they were going through. They were very dangerous people. They were more dangerous. They were feared by the other Viking warriors. They don't mess with him. He's an Uffadar. He's a berserker. Don't get around him. You never know what he's going to do, And being a law enforcement officer, I have seen people in that situation who on drugs. I have seen, we had one time, we had a skinny guy. I mean, he was no bigger than a pencil. It took about 8 of us to hold that guy down and handcuff him. You never know what somebody on drugs is going to do. And this is all related to drugs. A lot of witchcraft, black magic, and all that has a foundation of drug use. Definitely. It is there. And it is a very prominent part of it. And then you have other things like the Jaguar men, the Jaguar warriors of South America and the Aztec and the Mayans. Then you have the leopard and lion men of Africa. The list goes, you have the tiger men of China. The list goes on and on and on. These people blur that line between humanity and the animal world. And that has been a fear of mankind, my friends, for a long time. What if tonight if you're with me and I turn into some kind of animal, you don't know how to deal with me anymore, you know. And we do know that certain people who are apt to do this can get so angry they do what? They go crazy. They go berserk. That's where you get that word berserk from, okay? They do this as a psychological thing. So you when you push someone over that edge, you push them into the animal world from humanity in certain ways. And you got to be very careful how you deal with it. I used to joke about my initial DWC, dangerous when cornered. Definitely you want to respect that with any animal. If you corner them, you may have a problem because they're gonna act out of their nature. And that's what these people were afraid of. Other people acting outside of their nature, you know. And when you get to the Egyptians and look at some of the things every Egyptian god had an animal motif. Okay, that included Bastet, that included Anubis, and all of them. And I'll tell you another thing: they would actually do the funerary stuff and the temple stuff wearing masks like that. The priest would come out with a jackal head mask on. He looked like Anubis to them. He was Anubis. He was channeling Anubis. And they believed that God was in their midst when that man come out wearing that mask, or that woman came out wearing the lioness mask, or whatever. Every god had an animal attribute attached to it. And that's the way they went. And the jackal, the reason the jackal and Anubis are connected, the jackals are sort of scavengers. They eat the dead, and they take care of the dead carcasses. And Anubis is the god of what? The dead. You know? So you see the connections here that they went with. But they actually believed when that man put on the mask and that priest came out like that he was Anubis. You were in the presence of a god. So this all comes into a lot of human belief systems that they had. You know, they believed these things. Like, you know, if you were an Uthundar warrior, or you were, we talked about the ones in Ireland, the Irish werewolves, you know, they were actually considered guardians. Did you know that they were a military unit? They worked for lords of the land. You know, they were a mercenary military unit. Okay. This is very deep in our cultures worldwide. And I think this is where we get a lot of this stuff from, definitely. I my own self, I will tell you this, and I believe without doubt, I've seen some evidence that werewolves, and I know werewolves exist. I know this stuff is real, okay? Without a doubt. I have actually saw a werewolf one time, but I won't get into that tonight. That was on my own side. But let me say this. I would not be here to tell this story if he had seen me. Okay? Probably I would not be here. But without a doubt, these things do exist, and there's a reason for their existence and the way they bring these things about, and it is a spiritual connection. But I think there could also be some, and I talked about this on Kenny's show the other night, you know, there could be feral, what I call feral werewolves. In other words, they get tired of turning back and forth. They say, I'm going to stay, I love being a werewolf, I'm going to stay a werewolf from now on. I'm going to head for the woods, I'm going to live in the forest, eat deer the rest of my life, and be happy. So you may be the Dogman that you see may be a feral werewolf. He just may want to live out there like that. He may have made that choice. So you never know what you're dealing with here. You've got to be extremely careful with your cryptid, whatever it is, exactly what it is, because there's so many different avenues you could be looking at here, you know, with that. And that's like the Gugway. I gotta wonder about the Gugway. Is that more like, it sounds more like the short-faced bear than it does a Dogman. So you got some different ramifications going on with the people that say they see Dogman. They look very much like, you know, hyenas and stuff like that. You may have different variations on this. Who knows? Let me say this, my friends, just something for you to chew on, okay? Who knows what you're going to let loose in this world when you open these spiritual doorways? You don't really know. I lost your sound, brother. I can't hear you.
There we go. Yeah,
There you
Mike
go.
is muted. Anyways,
right.
yeah, going back to what I was saying. Yeah, you guys are absolutely right when it comes to that. And yeah, people don't know what they're tampering with, man. Like that's why I tell people all the time. I get emails quite a bit like, "Hey, I'm brand new at this cryptid researching thing. I'm going to go out in the woods and, you know, hunker down for a couple days." Okay, hold on. First of all, you got to gather as much intel as possible. Where you're going, what are you looking for? Should you be out there? All that stuff. And honestly, man, like this stuff isn't a game. It's really not. That's how people get hurt. That's how people get lost. That's how people get killed. Yeah, you have to do your freaking research on what it is you're going to be researching physically and spiritually because you have no idea what you're going to run into. You don't. Um,
Well, research and boots on the ground, they go together. You can't have one without
you
the
got
other,
it.
really.
Yeah,
And it's
it's
just
like a
like,
military thing. It's like a
yeah,
military
you
thing.
got to have
You
them
have
both.
your
Yeah.
soldiers and you got your freaking intel guys. That's what it is. Anyways, yeah. But
Yeah.
but the whole spiritual aspect of it, to me, that kind of leads towards vampires now. Okay, of course, you got your skinwalkers, you got guys that that basically that transform into dogmen or werewolves, and they freaking choose to stay like that. So what? Oh crud! So what? Let me take this off real quick. What in your guys' research, Kenny? Have you ever had anybody email you or through your time of just researching, with North American Dogman Project, anything like that? Have you had anybody come up with any vampirism or anything to do like that, working with dogmen or working against dogmen, colliding with each other?
That's some very interesting stuff right there for sure. I personally have never been able to verify anything along the lines of that. Yeah, I do know Dr. Carroll has spoken on my podcast before about a few entities or cryptids that would have some sort of comparison or ability to be one and the same. I think he would have some great answers there.
Gotcha.
Well, I have over the years done my own share of vampire hunting. Definitely. There have been several instances where I have encountered vampires. There was one time, it was in the church, by the way. This man had this young boy actually had a problem. I would say a demological type problem going on, where he actually attacked me and the youth minister that were there, and he became basically. I've seen his face morph into that what you would say is very much like a bat-like face in some ways. I actually seen that with my own. I'll tell you quickly how that happened. He just first he came at me, and he had we knew something was wrong with him, and it was before service started. It was a youth service thing going on, and he was sitting there shaking, and I didn't know if he was on drugs or what was going on with the guy. And I mentioned that to the youth minister, he said, well, maybe we need to talk to him. So we both walked over there to him, to see what was going on with the guy. And he was probably, I guess, maybe like 16, 17 years old, something like that. And he jumped up all of a sudden, grabbed me, and was in my face. And he was saying, I want your blood. I want your blood. I want your blood. Like that. And I was going crazy. I mean, and he also at the same time, he grabbed the youth minister, and while I was kind of pushing him back towards the chair that he said, he got up out of, pushed him back towards the chair and a table that was there. I was pushed him back there, trying to get him off of me. I could see his face beginning to morph, and this is what got me. I said, "What is going on here? What's happening with that?" And the teeth were getting like longer, like things. I'm serious. I could see this with my own eyes. And the nose began to change a little bit. The eyes slanted. And I'm saying, what's going on here? And about the time the youth minister saw this too, who was somewhat older than me. He was a good bit older than me at that time. I was very young too. He took the Bible, and as we pushed this guy back over the table, he put that Bible down over his face and rebuked the spirit out of that guy. Okay. And I'm still holding, and I'm, finally got him loose from me, and I'm stepping back, going, "What's happening here?" Seeing this happen. He pulled the Bible back. The guy just quit shaking, and just stopped immediately. As soon as he said that, as soon as he rebuked the spirit out of him, he pulled the Bible back, and his face was normal. So that was a actual vampire attack I was in the middle of. This guy was actually morphing into something very much like what I would call a vampire. I wouldn't have any other name for it. He looked very demonically like a vampire of a being. But I also encountered something like that out in the cemetery that I've told people a lot about. I actually encountered what I think was a real vampire out in a cemetery. Chindy knows I told him this story about this, where this young girl I met out in the, I was in the middle of an very old cemetery in downtown Charleston, South Carolina. And this girl come up to me and told me, said, I shook hands with her. And I actually was like shaking hands with a dead person. And she said, I'm a vampire. I'm the real thing, And I said, well, what are you doing out in the daytime? Because it was like late in the day. It was a dark, kind of cloudy day. She said, well, we can come out when it's not sunny, But we prefer to come out at night because we are, creatures of the night. And our power is much better at night than in daytime and all this stuff. So I'm thinking, I said, well, are you a member of one of these vampire societies or something like that, Which is what I thought she was, kind of goth, or something like that. And she said, no, I'm a real vampire. I'm like 170 some odd years old, And she told me her name. I said her name was like Beth Ann or something like that. Or Bethany or something like that was her name. I forget now. But anyway, and she said, oh, I'm a real vampire. I'm buried out here in this cemetery. And so while I'm talking to her, I kind of just look away and look back, and she is gone. Nowhere. And I could see through this cemetery. There's no way humanly possible unless she went straight up or disappeared. That she had to do something like that because she was gone. I even looked behind this, stick behind some tombstones, and I looked around. She was gone. And while I was standing there looking around, I kid you not, here's the cryptid part of it. Something catches my eye, and I look out, and then through these big oak trees, the biggest bat I have ever seen in my life was flying off down through there. I mean, size of an eagle bat. I have never seen a bat that big. And that was really freaky. I'm sitting there saying, nobody's ever going to believe this. This is crazy. And you know what? And this is why I caution people not to, to touch things or let things like that touch you. Okay. If you ever think you're encountering something like that, keep it out of your personal space. For nights after that, I would have dreams of her being in my dreams. And she would never sit. She was just like in the background, walking through the background of the dream. Until one night, the last time I dreamed about her, she said, I will see you again someday. And I got a feeling I may do that. I may see her again, but next time I see her, she's going to probably look the same. This has been a long, long time ago. She's going to probably look the same. I know I'm a lot older now, but she's going to look the same if I ever do see her again. That was freaky, very freaky experience. But I've had other vampire encounters I could tell you about. I won't go on and on with it, but we'll do a show on vampires some night. Call me, okay? But anyway, that's some of the things I've done. Yes, I've done some vampires. They are real, very real. And they are also in spiritual form and physical form. And they do not come back from the dead. No, let me stress something right quick to you. Nobody can raise the dead. Really, truly raise the dead. Except, I believe, as a Christian, God is the only one that can do that. Nobody else. No voodoo priest, nobody. But most of the time, when you're dealing with a physical vampire, they can be a dead body reanimated by the demonic, inhabited by a demonic spirit, or they can be a living person. I call these living vampires. That is inhabited with a demonic spirit. So the vampire is incredibly hard to hunt because she's most of the time, what? Spiritual and not physical.
Roger that. All right, we're gonna change a little bit of the trajectory. Of your guys' research, going back to you, Kenny. What are, I'm writing down notes as we're talking. So, what's the commonality and the coincidences when it comes to cave systems and cryptids? Back to you, Kenny.
Again, here we go with some pretty gnarly questions for sure. Well, I mean, you look at the cave systems, we know less about them than we do outer space and the ocean, which we literally know very minimal about both of those. And now, when you look at the areas people go missing, these strange sightings, if you look at animals in general, if you look at our ancestors, if you look at people now that maybe get caught in a bind and need to be put in a survivalist situation, caves, we all use this, everything I just mentioned. Now, you do have to realize that at certain parts, like our geologist William White says, there are minerals that will give off toxic type reactions to whether you're a human or an animal. Okay. And this is where, if something is in the realm per se, that it's able to be seen drinking water, such as that case in Michigan where you had those three friends seeing these wolf creatures cupping water in their hand and drinking it as if we would be. You have the Beast of Bray Road being seen consuming small animals on the side of the road. So this means right here, it's drinking because it's thirsty, it's eating because it's hungry. Okay. You now have other instances of where it's leaving footprints on top of this, which obviously, yes, paranormal can leave footprints as well. Yet we have footprints, we have it eating, we have it drinking, you have reports of it breathing and sniffing, and you can see the reaction of the steam because of how cold it is outside, no different than if your dog or yourself or a bear is breathing out in the cold. All that solidifies right there. This thing is needing to play by the rules that we have to play by. All right. And a lot of members of my science team would say that if something is in our realm like that, drinking and needing to act like the rest of us, breathe the air, they are in a form that would be able to be damaged, no different than you and I. Meaning, yes, a great white shark or a Tyrannosaurus Rex is a massive creature, correct? Okay. Yet we all know they could both be taken out with any sort of need. Okay, we don't need to dive into details, but Drewski, you would definitely understand this. You are a military specialist. Okay, it doesn't matter how dominant this T-Rex is, right? It's in our realm. It's going to take damage. But now, if you look at it as maybe not fully being in our realm, then sure, if it's paranormal based, it's not going to have to worry about anything in the caves and such. Yet, if it's a cave hyena or a short-faced cave bear or some of our ancestors, they were in caves. A short-faced cave bear spent 90% of its time in the caves. Yet it didn't go down to these really huge depths per se that it would be affected by those minerals that would give off those toxic reactions. Yeah, we don't even know how far in they went because we don't go in that far ourselves. We find very small bits and pieces, like our spelunker, Meku, will show us, of claws and such, where you can see where these short-faced cave bears were. Yet they would come out and get their food and drag them back in. I think there's a high probability that if we were able to really get down and explore these areas and caves, there would be backpacks, things that would belong to people for sure that have been pulled down there. I know Extinct Zoo, who is really scientific based, and I'm a huge fan of his and highly compelling, and also North O2. They all talk about how there were some really gnarly prehistoric critters and ancestors of ours that were roaming around. And they recently did an episode of Why Are We So Afraid of Caves? And everything I just told you right there is why we're so afraid of caves, and also some of our potential ancestors that might have spent more time in the caves than the rest of us. Also, think for 1 second, right? If we were in a situation prehistoric wise where we had to deal with a short-faced cave bear, I don't know how big our clan would be per se. I know that whatever you're handing me, I'm gonna look over at you and be like, Drewski, are you serious right now? And you're
Like,
gonna be like,
bro.
yeah. And Dennis is gonna be like, yeah. And I'm gonna be like, okay. Well, who's the one going in the cave now to get this bear to come out? Oh, yeah, you and you and you are, and we're coming in too. Wait, what? We're gonna go into a cave that we have no idea about, right? With a torch and some little pointy sticks and objects. Yeah, great plan here. And we're going to try and figure out where this short-faced cave bear is. No, they didn't do that most likely. Obviously, if there was an instance where you had to defend your family or your area of residency, sure, fight or flight, correct? Yet the majority of the time, you would try not to have an interaction with a short-faced cave bear in the cave. Like if that thing was coming to your area, there would probably be a high probability that there would be a sit down, and a lot of people might be thinking, hey, maybe we should remove ourselves from this area, because again, sure, could you deal with that short-faced cave bear? Yes. It's no different though than any other predator. Do we want to deal with that? What is the risk reward here? Yeah, we might remove the bear from this cave now. Yet how many people are we going to lose that are valuable to our clan at this point in time, right? I mean, what if we lose our farmer? What if we lose our blacksmith, right? What if we lose our nurse or doctor that has the most concept about how to help the rest of us? Oh, wait, no, that's not really a good trade-off. So when you look at like bears per se and grizzlies, sorry, which would be bears, I meant wolves and grizzlies, there have been instances where they fight, yet usually it's not a fight. It's a, hey, okay, this is my area, but this is your area. We're going to show a little bit of respect, and they don't necessarily give up their ground, but then they go away. They don't go out of their way to attack one another because a wolf is, yes, very large if it wants to be, but it can also take a lot of damage. Canines don't really weigh that much if you think about how big they are. And some of those pictures where you see those massive Canadian or Alaskan gray wolves, they're huge. Yeah, you would think they would weigh a little bit more per se, like a tiger would, right? A tiger looks like more or less what it weighs, if that makes sense. Okay. So a tiger taking on a bear still doesn't necessarily want to do it, but is not really, doesn't have to worry about it because it's almost the same as the bear. Okay. Yet the majority of predators aren't really about that, meaning you can scare off a bear or deter it, I should say, if you are able to accomplish what you're supposed to. If all three of us are here and this bear starts coming over that we don't want to deal with, yet we take our mountain bikes, we're on, we start holding them up, Dennis starts blasting an air horn, we all start screaming. Now we look a lot bigger. Now we are confusing this bear and we're making it realize, wait, it's just one of you. Is this worth the confrontation now? They didn't run. They held their ground. They made themselves look to me as if they're not really intimidated by me. Okay, I'm deterred. Yet now if that's a pack, right? A pack of wolves, that's where things become a little bit different because you have a group of predators together. But usually things that are solo based have to be a little bit more picky as to how they approach something, unless you're a herbivore, because if you hurt yourself, you can lay down in an area and hopefully heal and still eat some foliage and such. Yet if you are a lone wolf, which happens sometimes to wolves, or a mountain lion that are usually solitary hunters or tigers, grizzly bears, black bears. What happens now when you hurt yourself? A, you can't get the proper food source anymore, and now you're unfortunately higher up on the food menu for something else to want to come and get you. Like recently I saw a video of an injured black bear that was elderly and obviously wasn't doing the best. Well, guess what came behind it? I don't know the exact time frame, but a large grizzly bear.
A grizzly, yeah, I saw that.
Yes. Okay. So I don't know what happened to it. You don't, but we know grizzly bears attack black bears. They got it, right?
There's evidence of even wolves hanging out with bears and helping and cooperating in hunts sometimes. We've seen this. I've seen wildlife pictures about that. And you know, the interesting thing about that, Kenny, Drew, is that, going back to what you were saying about the cave systems, I would not want to take on a bear in a cave, okay? I think I'd rather be in the open anytime. I wouldn't want to take on anything, mountain lion, whatever. I have actually had run-ins with a lot of run-ins with bears, and most of the time, waving your arms and all that, well, they'll run. They'll leave you alone. If it's a mama bear, you may have a problem, you may have been. But the number one thing you never want to do with any animal is turn tail and run. That's the last thing you'll probably ever do, because that's an open invitation for them to come get you most of the time, okay? So you have to deal with the situation, whatever it is, and what type of animals. If you've got a pack situation going on there. And the thing about the lone wolf, I've studied wolves for many years. They're fascinating creatures. They have a system. They actually walk into the woods like an army unit. Did you know that? They actually hunt that way. But the lone wolf is so dangerous because he ain't got nothing to lose. See, now the pack of wolves, they're looking out for each other. They've got the consider the pack, the family. They're more cautious. The lone wolf has, he's got nothing like that to worry him. He is more dangerous in that respect. He's liable to do anything. But most of the time, you could even scare a wolf pack away from you. You can run them away. You do it the correct way. I've never actually encountered a whole pack of wolves. I have seen lone wolves, but I haven't once encountered a pack of wild dogs that was like that. And you don't scare them all because they have that pack mentality. See, they know they've got backup. And so they're not that worried about you. So you got to handle that situation quite differently than you would a lone bear or something. You got to be very careful, but you never lose eye contact with them. Don't take your eyes off them. Keep staring at them. That is just like with human beings. That's telling them, hey, I might be dangerous too. I'm not scared of you. Once you show fear, these animals are very super sensitive. We got to remember that. All animals are built super sensitive. They can pick up on your fear, on what you think. They can almost figure out what you're thinking. And they can pick up off of your breath getting quicker, your blood going up. They can pick up on these things. So you got to remain calm. You got to remain very steadfast, especially with the eyes. You got to keep that eye contact going, because if you don't, then if you look away, that is a sign of weakness. That's when they're ready to attack. In many ways. That's what I've been told by a lot of old forest rangers and stuff like that. That's the number one thing you want to do if you run in there. But in a cave, I think all bets would definitely be off. Be my luck, it'd be a grizzly bear in a cave that I would run into. But the whole thing is, when it comes to cave systems, if you look at the predominant size, and I talked to my good friend Linda Godfrey about this, about the Beast of Prey Road. She was before she passed away, we talked about this. She was kind of leaning towards some of this stuff being some type of conjuration thing going on. She was leaning that way. And I've talked with Ken Ginyard, another good friend of mine. I've talked with him about some of this stuff as well. And he says there's some other stuff going on with some of this stuff. Okay. But when it comes to cave systems, you got to look at how many reports, how many times Bigfoot, even Dogman, certain other cryptids are reported very close to nearby cave systems. Why is that? It's a pattern that you can't ignore or something like that. Because if I were going to hide from you, I would go to the caves. That's a perfect hiding place. Think about it. And that's where early man lived, because it was a defendable place. You could defend the cave. Much better than you could out in open in that respect. And and that comes to my other favorite cryptid, the Bear Man. He would mop the floor with Dogman, by the way. The Bear Man was an Indian brave that supposedly could turn into a bear. Something like along the terms of a grizzly bear type thing. The Arapaho and the Cherokee to this day have a dance that they do in the spring to wake the bears up. They had a very spiritual connection to bears. Bears were, really, they considered the bear as the real king of the forest. He's the real deal. So don't ever write him off because he can be very, very, very dangerous if you run into him, especially if she's a female. She ain't going to cut you no breaks. Definitely not. What do you think about? Let me ask you a question, right? What do you think about the pale crawlers? I have a feeling they come out of cave systems. What do you think about that? There could be whole civilizations. We don't know what's down there. That's a whole nother world below our feet that we don't even know what's there, And there have been many stories over the years of civilizations like the Ant-Men and the Moon-Eyed people and all this stuff that I study. What's going on with that? How do you feel about that? Do you think there's a possibility there could be something like that dwells in cave systems?
Yeah, I do. And to me, that's where you get like a lot of your lore from, like your rake and all that stuff. And honestly, when it comes to movies, man, like to me, they had to have gotten it from somewhere. Okay. If you look at that movie, like The Descent, you know what I'm saying? That's what kind of reminds me of Cave Dwellers as well. And as far as because the guys on my CW ops team, we actually try to go caving quite a bit, but we've been kind of slacking a lot. But that's one thing that's always in the back of my head, like, okay, what are we gonna do if we actually run into like a cave dweller? But to me, it makes sense because that kind of throws into the theory of like the hollow earth theory, right? Yeah. That's just me. What about you, Kenny? What do you think, brother?
Again, pretty gnarly stuff by both of you for sure. We definitely know that there are layers to Earth. I mean, yes, there is lava, and that from scientific based observations, you do know there is a certain distance that has been observed and documented for sure. Yet again, there are caves that lead to a bunch of different places for sure. And as we previously stated, you got ancestors of ours that use those. We have modern day people that use them. We have prehistoric and modern day predators that use them. You have missing people. You have strange sightings. Why are they all correlating near cave systems? I'm not really one to believe in coincidences. There's usually and most likely something that is underlying that causes an issue, no matter what it is in life. Okay, there is something that would lead you in the direction of understanding what's occurring, right? Usually your car doesn't just have a catastrophic engine failure, correct? There are other reasons of poor maintenance or things that were ignored. Check engine lights, or like rest in peace, mom, that used to just put a piece of tape over it, right? Things like that that would cause your catastrophic engine failure. So it's not just a coincidence. One day when it was cold outside, my mom's engine doesn't work anymore. There were telltale signs, right? The reason I said that is just to give an example of everything previously mentioned. It's not a coincidence that it all revolves around caves, yet it's pretty tough to figure it all out for sure.
I've been in some pretty interesting cave systems in my time, and you are entering a different world altogether when you do that. I mean, you're really off kilter. It's so different. It's like being under the sea. I've gone scuba diving. It's like being under the sea. It's a whole different ball game. And I have stood in front of some of the, I would say, scariest looking caves you can think of, and wonder, you couldn't see anything in them. There could be anything in there looking back at me. You have to wonder about that sometimes, and you can kind of get the creepy feeling something is watching you, definitely. But I think that's another reason why these so-called pale crawlers, I think they got to come from a place like that. I mean, their very makeup gives you that hint, you know. And, you know, I think in Jessica Jones and I did a show not too long ago about the wool pit children, you know, that they were found in England in wool pit. They had green skin. They came out of a supposedly pit or a tunnel there. They were like they didn't know English. They spoke a completely different language and nobody knew what it was. That sounds like, you know, refugees from a underground civilization to me. You know, that's very interesting.
All right, next question. So this is going to be to you, Kenny, and then of course to you, Dr. D. I'm just throwing it out there. So this is going to be a fun one. There's no right or wrong answer to this. So if you had to put your money down, your life savings or bet whatever with your life on which cryptid would win in an all-out brawl between a dogman, a werewolf, a big alpha, Bigfoot, a skinwalker, a vampire, a wendigo, or a gigway, or a crawler, or a mothman, who would you guys think would come out champions? Kenny, go.
That's a match I love to see. That would be interesting to watch. What do you think, Kenny?
Great question right there for sure. Well, first off, I would like to just say, because being a creature of the night myself, vampires are so dope. Yeah, that's not my answer though. That's not my
okay.
answer.
I was like, I knew it. No, anyways.
It's definitely going to be a Wendigo out of all that. The Wendigo would probably be the one that would have the best capability for sure, in my thoughts. I don't know the most about the Wendigo, but yet things that I have heard of and been introduced to seems definitely to probably be the most terrifying out of all those.
Okay, we'll go with that. All right.
My money would be on the werewolf. He's my favorite. He has very unleashed demonic power, very powerful creature, and partly, like we said earlier, supernatural, partly physical. He's coming at you from different avenues, definitely. My money would be on him, especially if it were like Bigfoot. You know, this is well known fact, and this question's been asked a lot. You know, if a full grown tiger, and a full grown African lion were to get into a fight, who's going to win? Well, now the tiger is bigger, but the African lion will probably take him because he's smaller and quicker. The quicker and the speedier an animal is, that's the bigger advantage over the bulk. Somebody as big as maybe Sasquatch, and he's a big guy because I ran into him one night, and I'm face to face. I know how big this guy is, and I would not want to do him in a fight either. Okay, definitely not. But he would be a little bit slower in movement, I think, than a werewolf. Definitely, a werewolf would take him. I do believe that. Even Dogman would take him. In that respect, a lot of people ask me that question: Dogman and Sasquatch. You know, I don't know. I think I would put my money on the lighter, smaller, the more lethal that animal can be, and that goes with cryptids as well.
Yeah, those are good answers, guys. Yeah, as that saying goes, speed kills. Yeah, but as far as that, as far as researching. We'll go with okay. I'll tell you what. We'll go with this. We'll go with this avenue. Since Kenny's forte is more of researching, studying, looking at cases, stuff like that, and then Dr. D, you did a lot of physical boots on the ground stuff. Okay, so here's my question to you. For all the listeners here who are interested in doing these things, what are your basics 101 on cryptid researching? When it comes to that, doing intel and all that stuff, Kenny, what would you tell them to start with in your basics, and like what would you do?
Love it right there. Excellent stuff. Well, you just got to start off with logic first with everything. Meaning, let's start with things that have been documented, have been presented to us. And then once things tend to not align with anything that we've been able to document, then let's step outside of that box and present it to somebody such as Dr. Carroll or others on my science team that specialize in things maybe that are paranormal based, like JJ Messenger or UFOs, doesn't matter, anything now that really allows another viewpoint that specializes in that aspect to come in and be like, hey, maybe this is occurring. Yet, like one of my scientists, William White, says, if you live in the good old US of A and you hear hoof prints stomping outside, you don't think zebra, you think horse, correct? Right? Because if you were in Africa, okay, then we think zebra. Meaning, like I said, logic first. There are reasons things do happen naturally that could become mysterious, like William White would say. There are certain minerals and rocks that, when combined with one another, cause toxic reactions, will cause magnetic pulls that will drain the battery on your electronics and such. Then that could seem as if maybe you were, as people would say, zapped by something. Not that they really weren't zapped by something, yet let's check and see if this area has these type of rocks or this type of magnetic pulls and things. And then once we find out it doesn't, all right, you eliminate that from the process of rationality and thinking. It's really important just to be subjective and objective, meaning I'm huge on science, yet at the same time, you have to make sure you're paying attention to good science and good scientists, right? An example I like to use all the time is you had people that were all on the same side at once with what they were trying to figure out to be a juvenile Tyrannosaurus Rex. Everyone's together on this. As time goes on, you have the good scientists and paleontologists here performing good science and realizing, wait a second, the analytics here and the analysis don't point in the direction of this being a juvenile T-Rex. We believe this is a subspecies of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Well, then you had the other side that was so dug into their trenches that it had to be a juvenile T-Rex. They refused to acknowledge the now incoming analysis that needs to cause a researcher or an investigative photojournalist to go in the direction of something. You are definitely entitled to have your own opinions, yet if analytics and proper analysis are pointing you in a direction, it really doesn't matter what you think. If you're a good researcher or a good scientist, you go with what is being presented to you, correct? All right, and guess what? It was not a juvenile Tyrannosaurus. It is called the Nanosaurus Rex. It is a subspecies of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. Bingo, right there. You had all kinds of brilliant people, not that the ones that refuse to acknowledge the Nanosaurus Rex are not intellectual. They are. They're some of the best paleontologists in the world. You don't have to be intellectual to be stubborn, right? Okay, that's just meaning you have to be able to evolve with the situation and figure out, wait a second, okay, this doesn't really seem to fall into something that could be a cave hyena, that could be a Dinopithecus or a shore-faced cave bear or something that is in our realm. This seems to be something that's more paranormal based. Let's get this over to members on my science team like Dennis and others that can really dive into that, and then give people the proper information. I would just highly suggest starting with the logic of things, just doing your research and realizing there are existing animals that make terrifying vocalizations and that are terrifying looking, especially at nighttime. There are prehistoric predators that look very much like a lot of sightings that have been reported. It doesn't really necessarily have to be per se a cryptid. It could just be something that hasn't fully been properly documented, meaning oh wait, we thought the short-faced cave bear was gone, but guess we really weren't. So once you start with the basis on something, that's when you move elsewhere afterwards, meaning, okay, all the Legos are in here. This definitely does not scream paranormal or extraterrestrial. Let's keep this over here and let's figure out what human type form this was, or what entity that was flesh and blood based this was. Oh wait, it doesn't fit in anymore. Like I said, let's get this over to Drewski and you guys. So that would pretty much just be my advice to anybody: is don't be afraid to learn. Also, don't be afraid to do your own research. Even if you value somebody's research, whether it's myself or anybody else out there, that's great. I love it. I appreciate that. But don't take myself or anybody else at face value. Again, do your own research. Form your opinions off of great sources, not just a few people that you may know and respect. There's a ton of beautiful information out there, and that's what I try to do when I gather thoughts and processes on things. Is I look at multiple sources of things I respect or things that are credible, and once I start to venture and get through all of those, you then can form a really good opinion about something. It's as one of my brilliant little brothers said: if you want to know history, correct, you read history throughout each civilization. Why? Because if you win, obviously the Roman side of history is going to be different than the Germanic side of history, correct? Right? Because victors are the ones that you get to hear that side. So when you look at it all, you're then able to piece it all together and get a pretty good understanding as to what is occurring.
Well freaking said, my man. All right, let's go with the boots on the ground. People who want to do boots on the ground research. Let's go. What you got, Dr. D?
Well, yeah, definitely. I love research. I've done research my entire life, seems like, I guess. And it has a very important part to play. But there comes a point where you need to go into the field, too, to understand things and all that. Inside of me, there's a skeptic and there's a believer. And there's a balance, a scale, and I like to weigh things on that scale. And you can do that better in the field sometimes than just with research. So I think they both go together. They're married. You can't have one without the other. Definitely not. And like I said, at the beginning of the show, the investigative research is very, very important because to get deep, it's like Kenny was saying, it gets deep into that. And here's the thing about that, though. I want to say this about science. Okay, science, I call it the old science. It's got blinders on, like a horse. It only sees sometimes what it wants to see. And like I said earlier in the program, they don't even believe there's a spiritual side to this universe. Without a doubt, there is, but they don't believe that. They can't weigh it. They can't put it in a test tube. They don't believe it, And we got to take that from science and understand that we got to have an open mind, but we don't want our brain to fall out. We don't want it so open we have our brain fall out. But we got to have an open mind, And I'll give everybody my favorite quote tonight, okay? And this is Herbert Spencer, who once said, "Every myth and legend known to mankind is not without its authentic foundation." Everything starts with the truth somewhere, and that's the way you begin, whether it's in the field or with research, okay? Either one. That's where you got to start, and that's by studying folklore, getting into anthropology, getting into archaeology, getting into history. The list goes on and on and on. You've got to look at this diamond from all its different angles to understand what's really going on. So it doesn't just stop in the field, and it doesn't stop with the research. It's an ongoing process that continually keeps going on, okay? And you got to remember that and understand that as well. But to me, I've learned so much from folklore. I've learned so much from the eyewitness accounts, so much from every time I go into the forest, I learn something, and I love that, I love to learn something all the time. And whenever I have an encounter, whether it be demonological or whatever type, I always come away learning something from it. And that's what you got to do. You got to keep learning. You got to keep looking, investigating, and keep researching and going out in the field. It's just like trying to ride a bicycle. I can talk all day long about riding a bicycle until I get on it and start peddling. This is a different thing altogether. Okay, and that's the way you got to look at it, is the field research part of it as well. But unfortunately, there are cases where I'm getting older myself. You don't get out in the field anymore, so your research is just that much more invaluable to you if you can't get out in the field, you know. But like I say, they both go together. They work together, and so definitely you want to look at that. And then, like I say, you got to study history. You got to do all these different things to grasp this thing, because it is such a large field. But to me, that's what makes it so very downright interesting, you know, to me. But like I say, you got to keep that skeptic and that believer together and let them weigh things together. Um, I used to have a saying about that you know, when I go in to investigate, whether it's a Bigfoot sighting or anything else, UFO or whatever, I was trained to look upon that thing as a crime scene, and it needs to tell me what's going on there. Or if you're in an environment like out in the woods or in a cave or wherever you're at, you need to be very attentive and very close observation of what's going on around you at all times. You know, we've talked about this before. You know, people have different hunting techniques. Whatever does it is best for you. You know, a lot of people ask me that. You know, well, should I do this? Should I do that? I said, whatever is best for you that you are comfortable with, but it needs to get results. It needs to be effective. Don't do anything ineffective, because you're just wasting your time. You know, you don't want to do that. And your time, like, you know, people that have to work and hold jobs, their time is valuable when they go out in the field. You know, you don't want to waste it. But there's different techniques, and whatever works for you. You know, I know what works for me, and you know what works for you may be different. So we got to look at that too as a boots on the ground thing too. Okay, because people do this and approach it differently. But in the end, I'll say this: you know, you got to keep your interest going in it. And you got to be inquisitive. You got to be, you know, curious. You got to be curious. As Alice said in Wonderland, curiouser and curiouser. Okay, you got to keep your curiosity going. But you need to, if you're going to be a monster hunter, okay, you need to do it the right way, and you need to have a plan in place when you find the monster. Okay, you got to be ready for that. If you find your quarry or whatever it is you're looking for, and what situation is going to be, you got to be in, like, you know, with Cryptid Warfare, you're training all the time, which is good. You got to train and be ready for any scenario. That's what military does. Okay, that's their basis of training. Okay. Doing different scenarios. What if this happens? What if that happens? You've got to cover that as much as possible. Law enforcement does this too. Okay, your brothers in law enforcement know that well too. So, you know, you got to keep that up too. So that's part of the out in the field thing too. That training that you got to keep on top of. You know, if you do not keep on top of your game, you'll be under.
Right.
And you don't want to be there. You don't want to be there. You want to always stay on top of your game, especially when you're monster hunting.
Cheers to that. Guys, well freaking said. We're coming up on that time now. Guys, I just want to say I appreciate you. I appreciate your guys' time, because I know it's very, very, very valuable. But just thanks for coming to hang out. And yeah, before we go, why don't you guys get some shout outs on where people can find you, where they can support you. And yeah, let's go with that. Kenny, you up?
Well, first off, thanks for letting me come and hang out with you guys tonight. Much love to both of you for sure. You're also part of the squad. Dennis comes over and hangs out weekly on my podcast, which is epic for sure. We'll have to get you back over there sooner than later, Drewski.
Yes, sir.
As stated earlier to everybody, at this point in time, until I'm able to grow a little bit more on my thread, I just churn out as much stuff as I possibly can. I have 3 different podcasts that people can check out depending on what their interest realms are. They're all easily found under Midnight Lycanthropy on the good old YouTube. Also, Lord Starfox, Lorde, and then Starfox. You can find all my stuff right there. I have as much content out at the moment as I possibly can. I still have 4 or 5 videos I'm backed up on. No worries, you need to have hosts and great content to create stuff that you're able to share around with people for sure. I try to put out something at the moment daily to every day and a half, as stated. When I'm able to grow to a larger presence, I might be able to tone that down a bit. Yeah, at the moment with Camp Nightmare Fuel, When Crows Speak, Midnight Lycanthropy, and then trying to help out others such as yourself that have helped me out, pretty much have all my time taken up into that. I do have all other social medias, not really the most active on them. Anybody out there that has my phone number, you can always just text me for sure. I don't really talk on the phone the most unless somebody really needs me to, because surprisingly enough to everybody, yes, as time goes on, this is the goal to upgrade. I do everything from my YouTube channel, from my iPhone and my Samsung tablet. I don't have a computer, so with all the editing I have to do, it's all from my phone, meaning people can text me. I see that and I will respond. Yet being backed up as it is and trying to create content, can't really just sit on my phone and talk. And it's also why I don't really have time to invest on other social media presences, because I invest literally everything into my YouTube channel. I do really appreciate YouTube finally monetizing me and giving me an opportunity to have a great platform and my own business. It's totally epic. I love it. Plus, I get to sit down with individuals such as yourself. Yeah, I pour in a ton of work, which is expected. You have to work for things you enjoy. I come up with all my own music, all my own art. I come up with all my own hosts and the topics that we're going to cover. I'm always on the lookout to keep on building the Midnight Society, also the Midnight Society science team. There really isn't the most downtime for me at the moment, for sure. Again, no complaints. So the best way for anybody to keep up with me is text me. If not, hit me up on some of the other areas you do communicate to me on. Leave a comment on my videos. Yet the best way you can help me is like, subscribe, share around my stuff. If you get bored, check out the merch store, whether it's myself or large content creators. That's super beneficial for what we're trying to do. Also, yes, no one likes ads, and I do apologize that I need to always say this, yet we strategically place those ads in our video to help us grow in the algorithm. Those are pretty much literally the best way you can help anybody, whether it's a massive content creator like ESPN or the Boston Bruins, or somebody such as myself or Dr. Carroll. It doesn't matter, Drewski, anybody you can think of. Yes, those ads are going to help out that content creator on any level. So that's a big thing right there for sure. Love everybody and thank you.
Roger that. Dr. D.
Well, I'll invite everybody over to my channel, Hunting the Shadows YouTube podcast channel and agency. Come on over and hang out with us. So, ring our bell, give us a like, subscribe. Just last week, I did a great show on humanzees. That was the super secret Russian experiment that went on back in the 1920s, where they were actually impregnating women with the embryos of chimpanzees. So that was an interesting show. If you missed it, you might want to check it out. They were monkeying around with stuff, definitely. Anyway, yeah, you want to go over and check that out. And also, we have shows on Friday night, Paranormal Point of View, and The Road Less Traveled. That's all at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can also get in touch with me if you need any kind of a consultation, paranormal-wise. You just want to tell me a story. Send me pictures all the time. Whatever you want to do, if you just want to ask me a question or whatever, you can get in touch with me at DennisWCarroll.com. and for any kind of consultation service, or you can also Gmail me at denniswcarroll@gmail.com. And you can reach me very well through the best way is through the website. Okay, definitely check that out. And my books are available on. I think Drew's got one. My books are available on Barnes and Noble and Amazon. Just look up the author Dennis W. Carroll. I got to put the W in there. There's another Dennis Carroll. He plays football in Australia. I don't do that. Okay, I used to play football years ago, but that's a long story. Anyway. That's how you look me up as the author on that, okay? So check it out if you get a chance. And like I say, oh yeah, by the way, we have membership open at Hunting the Shadows. You can become a Shadow Wolf if you want to join the membership. And don't forget, we own the night, and the shadows belong to us.
Cheers to that, boys. Good job. Yeah, guys, if you guys want to get a hold of these fine gentlemen, I will have all the information below in the show notes. Other than that, guys, that is a wrap. Like I said, you guys need any questions, you guys need any answers when it comes to anything of the woo-woo, the spiritual, the cryptids, anything like that. These guys are the best in the business. So hit these dudes up. I will have their links in the show notes. Go support them. Go be a member. Go like and subscribe, guys. It really helps out a lot. So hit these guys up. Other than that, guys, that's it for the show. If you guys got any questions, you guys got any cryptid sightings? You guys got any stories? You guys got any prayer requests? Shoot me an email, cryptidwarfare@gmail.com. That's cryptidwarfare@gmail.com. Also, too, you guys got any cryptid problems? You guys need a liaison? Let me know. c.woperation17905@gmail.com or hit me up on Instagram, Cryptid Warfare. So, all right, guys. Hope you guys have a blessed week. Be safe out there. Stay bundled because it's going to get freaking cold. And have a Merry Christmas, guys. So, all right. We are out. Later.